tear, it falls and hits the ground. A tree, it falls without a sound. A bird, it calls and sends you home. A man, he sits in the cold all alone.
Hi, welcome to The Joy of Sunflowers. You're about to watch a video with Elyse, who is a yoga instructor and mama. She is going to go through her lost story and her rainbow baby and why she got into the yoga space.
Okay, hello. My name is Elyse, and I'm an advanced yoga teacher. I'm a very dedicated practitioner. I like to always throw that in there because yoga is definitely a lifestyle to me. It's much more important that I embody it in my life than anything else. And like all of you, I have my own story, my own struggle with conception and loss. And because of that, now I teach women who are trying to conceive after loss or infertility. So I'm also the creator and founder of the Empowered Conception Path, which is a yoga program specifically to help women who are trying to conceive after loss or infertility really just cope with the overwhelm and the stress of it all, to help them reduce stress and just stay mentally and physically healthy on this journey. And so I'd love to share with you my story and what brought me to this place. It's been a while now since I've been doing this. So it's always interesting to try to go back there and recall everything after so much work has been done and so much healing has been done, which is a good thing. And I'll talk about that too. I was never someone who always wanted to be a mom. It was something that I knew would happen. I always sort of pictured it, like I knew I would have kids. But in my 20s, I felt like I was irresponsible. Like just the way I was brought up. Sorry, I'm just making sure actually I have the right microphone on. Okay, good. I just, in my 20s, the thought of having kids it just never even entered my mind at all. And in fact, I was so naive, I guess you could say, that I used to say that, if I couldn't have kids, I would be okay with that. That if I was someone who could not have kids, that I would just be okay with that. That's something that I would think and say. And looking back on that is totally incorrect and very ignorant and stupid, but that's just how I felt at the time. And so I didn't start trying to conceive until I was 30. I was with my partner for about 5 years at that time. So in a solid relationship for sure, someone I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And I think when you don't have that urgency to conceive, something definitely happens to your biological clock when you turn 30. It's like, in the back of your mind that soon you're going to have to take some action on this if this is what you want. And when you turn 30, it's like, okay, you're kind of ready to start taking action, especially if you're with someone at that point, right? If you're not, then you're probably ready to find someone to settle down with. And so I started trying. I was 30 and just trying like casually, right? No tracking or anything like that. Hoping it happened. After rounding up on about a year of it not happening, I thought it was time to take my efforts a little more seriously and start tracking ovulation and maybe go get things checked out. So I went to my family doctor. They did like a preliminary test, so not a fertility specialist at this stage. Everything checked out. The next stage would be to go to a fertility specialist if you still want more testing done or if any red flags show up. And my partner had to do his sperm analysis and didn't really feel any urgency to do that. So that cup just kind of sat in our apartment and did nothing for a while. And I remember I went to India for a month, nearing the end of our second year of trying. And I said to myself, okay, when I come back, we're going to take this really seriously. And a couple months after I came back, sure enough, we got a positive pregnancy test. And this had been after a couple years of trying. And I was obviously super happy, over the moon. Excuse me. Couldn't, excuse me, I have like a tickle in my throat. So I'm sorry if this happens. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was finally our turn. I'd spent months going through it, going through the symptom spotting and the Googling and the daydreaming and the hoping and just being in my head, wanting it to happen, wondering if it would happen, envisioning it happening month after month, getting disappointed when your period comes month after month. And then here we were, like it's happening. But like everyone, you don't get too excited right away, whether you've had a loss or not. You know that the first trimester is the high risk, the highest risk of miscarriage. You know that you want to wait until that 12-week mark to tell people, to start feeling confident about it. And so, that's what I did. I waited, and I had an ultrasound at about 9 weeks. Everything looked good. And so, the 12-week mark came and went. I told everyone, started planning. And I remember going into a midwife appointment at 14 weeks. They tried to listen to the heartbeat and she couldn't find it. But she also, 14 weeks is early, and to find it with that machine and she wasn't concerned at all. She said it could be like the placenta's in front, or we just can't hear it. It's like nothing to be worried about at this stage. So she didn't seem worried, and I'm, like I said, my life is yoga. Okay, I wasn't worried. I'm not a super stressed out person. So if she wasn't worried, I honestly wasn't worried either. But okay, cool. And so a couple weeks go by, and I was away for my birthday, for my 33rd birthday. And I was in Montreal. So that's where I was born. That's where I'm from. I'm in Toronto right now. Niagara Falls, actually. But anyway, I went to Montreal for my birthday for a weekend, and I went to the washroom, and there was like a little bit of spotting, like brownish. And again, I'm not a super stressed out person, and I don't worry. And I thought, okay, I didn't like seeing that, but at the same time, it wasn't like red period blood. I wasn't feeling any pain or anything like that. And I just thought, this might be normal. And you do some Googling, and it's like, it could be normal. It could not be. Also, I'm in Montreal right now. I'm like, okay, well, it's not bad. It kind of like stopped. Like I just had when I wiped, I would see it, and then there was nothing. So I thought, okay, hopefully everything's fine. And then when I came back from that trip, the spotting was continuing. And then that's when I really started to, I don't want to say panic, but panic in a way, like get really concerned, really ask around. Like I messaged my midwife, of course, and she had told me, okay, come in like the next day, come in and see me, and we'll look for the heartbeat. And by the time going into that midwife appointment, you know, and I think if you've been in this experience, you know when things aren't going right and you have this feeling like this isn't good. This is likely happening. I'm probably having a miscarriage. And she obviously tried to find the heartbeat, and there was no heartbeat. And then she had to send me to get ultrasound because they have to be sure. And the way that it works, like in Canada, is that you have to go see an ultrasound technician. They don't just like do it right there. And then the technician has to call the doctor or the midwife, and then they report back to you. So it's you kind of get the runaround. And so I went into a walk-in ultrasound clinic, and this place was packed. And I walked in just like tears, didn't care. They sent me in right away. They did not make me wait at all. They sent me in right away, and the ultrasound technician did her thing. They don't tell you anything. And I got in the car, and then my midwife called. And of course, she asks, "Are you driving?" Yes, I am. Maybe you should call me back when you get home. No, just tell me now. And yeah, I had a miscarriage, a missed miscarriage. So the baby had stopped developing at about just before 14 weeks. And I didn't have any symptoms until 16 weeks. So in my mind, I was 16 weeks pregnant. And so I got back to my apartment, and my landlord was there, and she had just been on vacation for like a month or so, a long time. And she knew I was pregnant, and she's outside with her daughter-in-law and her baby. And she's like, "Hey, so excited to see me because it's been so long." And I'm just like crying right away. I'm having a miscarriage. It was terrible. I felt really bad for them. It was a very awkward moment. It was just terrible. And she was very concerned. And then I just like snuck in my apartment, and that's when I called my midwife back, and I had to go to the hospital. And of course, when you go to the hospital, you're in the labor and delivery unit, and it's the hospital I went to as well was like it wasn't nice. It was old, and I always wanted a home birth, and I did end up having a home birth. I'll get to that. But so I didn't want to be anywhere near this place. And especially in these conditions. But I just remember being in so much pain, like emotionally. I was very sad. It's like I was like split into two parts. There's a part of me that was very accepting of what was going on as it was happening. Okay, this is happening. I'm having a miscarriage. This is okay. This is sad, but it's okay. I'll be okay. And then there was a part of me that the grieving part of me. It was just keeps hitting you in waves that it's gone. It's gone. Your baby's gone, and it's not happening. And everything you've been planning for and thinking about and dreaming about is just swept away. And for us, after 2 years of trying, it just felt like we were climbing a mountain and you could see the peak of that mountain. And all of a sudden, just with just one swoop, you're back at the bottom again. And because everyone knew in my life, it was like I constantly had to tell people about it, like, through text message or whatever. And every time I had to tell someone about it, even write it down, it was so painful. It's like this new wave of emotion would just hit me. It was the saddest I've ever felt. And I really have to think about it now to get emotional about it. I don't get emotional about it now because so much time has passed, so much has happened. But if I'm really in it, if I really think about it, I can still get emotional about that time because it was very, 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 very painful. If you're listening to this, you likely already know. Anyway, luckily, I did not need any surgery or anything. I was at the hospital overnight, and I went home the next day and went through it. Felt all of the emotions, spent time with family and friends, and I just grieved. I grieved, and I've never felt. Luckily, I've never felt that kind of loss before in my life. Like, I've been very lucky that I haven't lost anyone close to me. And so that was really that was a lesson in grief itself, that whole experience. And I'm grateful for that now, actually, because I'm able to be a lot more compassionate with people when they're going through something like this, any kind of a loss, really, and to be able to connect and understand it better. I think that's something I'm grateful for, actually, because I had never experienced that type of pain. And of course, it's like you join this miscarriage club that exists, and until you're in it, you just don't understand how hard it is and how painful it is, really. How much of a loss it truly is. And so, before my miscarriage, I would be that person who would say things like, it's common, and at least, you can get pregnant. Like, I wouldn't say necessarily those things to that person, but that's what I would think. And now I would never, ever say any of those things to anyone who's had a miscarriage. It's just nothing but, I'm sorry for your loss. That sucks. It's terrible. I'm here for you. There's no silver lining. There's no silver lining. And learning that you have to experience it to know. So it's not other people's fault that they do say those things, right? They just don't know. They haven't experienced it, and that's a good thing. Because it sucks. And that's the other interesting thing, is that was one of the only things, and that's what I love about this event, and even speaking about this now, is one of the only things that brought me any level of comfort was actually speaking to women that I knew that had been through this. And knowing that there were women out there who felt my exact pain. That actually brought me comfort. But it also sucks at the same time, because you also never want any woman to feel that way, ever. Ever. So after the miscarriage is when I would say mentally and emotionally things got very difficult for me. And even though it had taken us a couple of years to get pregnant, for some reason, it's like I forgot about those 2 years, and I just thought, okay, we're going to get pregnant again, right away. And there was this urgency in my mind of wanting to get pregnant right away, and almost replacing that pregnancy, thinking to myself, okay, if I just get pregnant again, then everything is going to go back to the way it was, and I'll be fine. And that's not what happened. It took us another year to conceive. And in hindsight, it was actually a really good thing that it took another year because it really gave me an opportunity, I'll say, for actually a few things. But it gave me an opportunity to really move through that grieving process and really heal. And for me to learn a lot of lessons and really grow as a person from that experience. And that's really what I teach my students in my program. Because the first few months after the miscarriage were like I was consumed, obsessed with getting pregnant again, obsessed with it. And I would Google all the time. Like in my 2-week wait, I would just constantly be on Google. When my period came, I was a mess. It destroyed me. And I think that's like a combination of the trauma of having a miscarriage, and then you're kind of like reliving that. But also just, I was not in a good place. I was really attaching myself to, getting pregnant again, just wanting that back. And it got to a point where, and I wasn't like going out as much and enjoying my life. Like I was really not enjoying my life, the way that I used to. And it got to a point where 1 month I was like totally I convinced myself, because this is what you do. And if you've been here, you like symptom spot in the 2-week wait and you start to convince yourself that you're pregnant. Even though I knew that PMS symptoms and period symptoms are literally the same. I knew that from experience. You still always analyze everything and try to magically, I don't know, guess if you're pregnant or not. And so 1 month, that's what I did. I really convinced myself I was pregnant. I was so sure. And when I wiped and the paper had blood, I went to test one morning and I was like so sure. I was like, this is it. I'm pregnant. And I peed in a cup and I dipped the pregnancy stick and then I wiped. And then the paper was like pink. Like I had my period. And I felt in that moment so much shame. And I wasn't typically when I got my period, I would like really break down. But I just felt sick of it. I felt sick of myself. And I was like, I made a very conscious decision that I could not live this way anymore. And I couldn't continue to allow this particular situation that happened in my life, this experience, to define my whole life and how I was living and how I was feeling. And, your worth and your value and everything, you just put everything on this thing. And I was really done with that. And I knew that I had been really sort of torturing myself for a while, for a few months after the miscarriage. And I also knew that I had every tool at my disposal to get out of that. Like I said, and especially at the time, like I'm a yoga teacher. And at the time, I've spent like 4 hours a day in the studio, like 2 hours a day practicing, very intense, very full on in it, 100%. That was my life. And I knew that I was not embodying all of the things and the work that I did on my mat into this life situation that I was going through. I wasn't being present in my life at all. I was constantly in my head, living for this future that I wanted, instead of processing really what happened in a healthy way and just living the life that I had. And it was impacting my relationship too. I was putting a lot of pressure on my partner to like during when you have to have sex, it was like so much pressure. And just for all of it, like, even though we had gone through the same loss, I definitely know from speaking to many women now, given what I do, that for the most part, men and women process this very, very differently. And it, of course, it's different because it happened to us. It was our bodies. It was a part of us. And so, yeah, it was difficult. It was putting a strain on my relationship for sure, in more ways than one. And so, like I said, I made a really conscious effort to really embody the lessons on my mat, like acceptance and surrender and presence, and really bring them into this life situation. And so I also started to draw a lot of boundaries. I had to be realistic about what are the things that are stressing me out right now, or that are at the very least like fueling that fire. And some of those things were like the Googling and the symptom spotting. And so in order to be more present in my life, I really had to stop that. I had to stop completely. It was just something I wasn't going to compromise on anymore. I wanted to make sure that I was physically and mentally in the best place possible for when I got pregnant again. And at the time it was if and when, right? I would question, was that my only chance? And so I also, another huge motivation for me, and you might be able to relate to this, is that I really did not want the experience that I went through and the trauma that I went through to define my future pregnancy. Like I said, I always wanted a home birth. And so I didn't want to move into my next pregnancy with fear and stress and anxiety. And even though everything is fine and everything's going well, I'm still just thinking about what could go wrong and not enjoying this pregnancy that I've wanted for so long. I did not want that. I wanted to step into my next pregnancy feeling confident and feeling present, feeling relaxed, feeling good, and totally knowing that I don't know the outcome. And I think that's something you learn from having a miscarriage, is that things don't go according to plan. And I think you need to embrace that things don't go according to plan. And that's something I learned, right, in this time, in that year. And to embrace that in a positive way, because sure, things don't go according to plan when bad things happen, but sometimes unexpectedly the best thing happens, but we never consider that. We only ever consider the bad things. And so in this year, few things happened. For one, fertility testing. Like I said, my partner never got his sperm tested. So I was like, let's get on this. I did all of the testing at the fertility clinic. Everything came out good. Egg count and quality and tubes were clear. Everything was good on my end. But my partner had low sperm motility. And so this is our infertility. This is why it was taking us longer, why it took us longer. And rounding up to about a year of trying, the fertility doctor, once she got all of our results, said we could do an IUI if we wanted to. And I was ready to do an IUI. I thought, yeah, let's do that. And my partner was not. He didn't want to do that. He said, we got pregnant naturally once, we can do it again. And we agreed to wait 6 months. And then if in 6 months we were still not pregnant, we would go down that road. And then sure enough, that very next month, when we would have done the IUI, I got pregnant again with my daughter, who is now almost 2. She's 21 months. And so when I got pregnant with her, again, super happy, cloud 9. Couldn't believe it. It's like a huge relief, breath of fresh air that it happened. And I did do the work. Everything that I just mentioned to you, I did. I had been really focused on being present, not getting in my head, really embracing the unknown. And that pregnancy went so well. And I remember being at my midwife appointment, and they're always like, "Do you have any questions?" And she was like, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "No." Like I said, "No, I never had questions." And I said to her, since my miscarriage, I'm just actually a lot more relaxed. I'm just kind of go with the flow. Because in my first pregnancy, I was more like questions, planning, let's do this, let's do that. Whereas like this time I was just taking it day by day, week by week. I wasn't getting ahead of myself planning everything. And yeah, so I said that to her and she laughed and she said, "That's interesting because typically when women have a miscarriage, they're more stressed after, not less stressed." And I thought to myself, yeah, that's true and that makes sense. But I wasn't. And this is what I want to give to other women. That exact moment is exactly what I want to give now and have been for the last couple of years. But I wasn't stressed and I planned my home birth and we didn't find out the gender, which was something that I always want to know. But Gary always wanted a surprise, like, but that was again something that I was kind of into now because again, it was like not defining anything, just going with the flow, seeing, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. I don't need to plan colors. Like, let's just take it day by day. That was a part of it. And I feel that I do want to talk a little bit about my birth because the yoga it not only helped me through this time of conception and then healing from my miscarriage, but also having the birth that I desired so much. And without my practice, I don't know if it would have gone so beautifully because again, to give birth at home, first baby without any drugs or anything like that, you have to be confident in yourself and you have to be present. It's really all about presence. I believe every woman can do it, no problem. The only thing that stops us is our own internal resistance and overthinking. Just like that's the exact same thing that causes stress, during when you're trying to conceive, after a miscarriage, in life in general. But it's getting in your head. And so being able to cultivate that deep presence and surrender and acceptance through labor and just be able to do it without fear, like no thoughts of losing my baby, like nothing like that. And for it to just, it went as smoothly as it could have possibly gone. And when my baby, now I can get emotional. When she finally was in my arms, like the whole time, I'm like, until this baby is in my arms, like, who knows what's going to happen? That was really how I approached it. And when my baby was in my arms and I had done it, I did the thing and it was exactly how I wanted it. And looking at her, and I didn't even know it was a her because you're so in the moment. I'm just looking at my baby. And it was the midwives that said, okay, eventually they're like, okay, so do you want to see like if it's a boy or a girl? Me and Gary were like, oh yeah, I guess we should check. um it was amazing. It was amazing. And I know it would have been amazing no matter what or how or when, but I still do feel it was like extra special, having gone through all of that to get her here. Um, and again, not letting fear or stress or anxiety or anything, cloud any of that, any of my experience with her, my time with her in the womb. And yeah, becoming a mother now is like, I wouldn't say I don't have regrets about not wanting to do that sooner. Because I wasn't ready, and I wouldn't be the mom that I am now if I had had children, in my 20s. But I will say I will absolutely encourage my daughter, if that's something she wants, to do that whenever she wants, as soon as she wants. I felt like for me, it was always like, wait, 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 you have plenty of time. You have plenty of time. Like that's just the messaging that I got. That kids they don't add, they kind of subtract. But now, I mean, to me, being a mom is the best and most amazing experience. And yeah, I'm just I'm grateful. I'm grateful even now, even with everything, I'm grateful for my miscarriage. Like you can get to a point where you say that. I know it seems for some of you, it might seem like that's impossible, but you can, if you do the work and, you really, move through all of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions around it, and have a way to do that, a system to follow or someone to talk to. It's not doesn't have to be yoga. It could be anything. It could be therapy, but it's worth digging into for sure. Because I always talk about as well how what I went through made me a better mother because I am more present with Araya because I went through that. And I'm much more great. Like, I'm just so grateful for her. I'm just grateful. Like, I did not sweat the small stuff. I just was so happy to have her in my arms. And I know that whole experience made me more resilient, and stronger in motherhood. There's no doubt. And so to sort of wrap up my story, Araya is now 21 months. After having her, I knew I wanted 2 kids. I knew ideally I would like them close together, about 2 years apart. But I also knew not to attach myself to any expectations, attach myself to any plans, and that it took a long time for us to conceive. And then it took another year after a miscarriage so we could have another miscarriage. And then, like I definitely was settling into whenever we have our next child, we have our next child. If they're 4 years apart, that's okay. If they're 5 years apart, that's okay. It's okay. At the same time, we're going to try as soon as we can, right? Because you never know. So, it took about a year for me to get my period back after Araya. And about that time, I was like, okay, let's start trying. So sure enough, after a few months, I got pregnant. And again, I was so excited, so happy. Couldn't believe, and this was probably the first pregnancy actually that I was surprised. It was a very new feeling. I was really surprised and almost like, oh shit. I was a little, okay, there's gonna be 2. This is actually happening. Whereas like with the other 2 pregnancies, it was nothing but I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. And so this was the first time that I felt like, oh, okay. And unfortunately, it was almost 6 weeks. I went to the washroom and there was like it's just this like dot of blood on the paper, just a dot. And I knew. And then your mind kind of cycles because even with the first late term miscarriage, there were signs. There were signs of pregnancy symptoms going away, but I just wasn't totally in tune, I guess, or I just wasn't really thinking about that. And it was my first time being pregnant. So I didn't really know, but there were definitely signs. And so this time I knew, and this time's symptoms came much faster because it's my second pregnancy. And as soon as I saw that drop of blood, I thought, okay, this is a miscarriage. And I didn't know. I had no expectation, again, leaning into this like unknown. I had absolutely no expectation as to how I would feel if I did have another miscarriage. And the circumstances were very different this time around because it was much earlier on. And I think a miscarriage is painful no matter when it happens. So if you're watching this, if you've had a miscarriage at 5 weeks, if you've had a miscarriage at, 18 weeks, I think it's painful, and everyone processes loss and their experience in a different way. For me, in my experience, it was incredibly different having that first late-term miscarriage to having this second. Now, while I have a daughter as well, early miscarriage. And for many reasons, one of them definitely being the work that I did to really process and move through that first one. And so I was sad, and the sadness definitely it came, the grief kind of came in those waves throughout the day. I'm at the hospital, I come home, and it's just like, it's just sad. And you have those thoughts. You got excited, and I thought, okay, like this is happening. Like I really thought I'm going to get my dream. Like after all that, I'm going to get my babies 2 years apart. Like it's going to happen. And, again, that's kind of taken away. But the next day I was, I had one of my best friend's weddings, and I was in the wedding party. And I was like, this is terrible timing. I'm going to be basically having my miscarriage during her whole wedding. Like, and I'm there all day. And not going to the wedding was not an option. I knew mentally I could handle it. I knew that I would be okay. This is one of my very best friends too. I wanted with all of my heart to be there. It would have taken a lot for me to not be there. And I, again, going in with no expectation, I'm going to see how I feel. And I got up the next morning and I went, and I had an amazing time at that wedding. I really did. And I moved through this miscarriage so easily that it shocked me, actually. It really surprised me, and I kept waiting for it to hit again. And it didn't. And I think that's, again, in part because of the work that I do too. I talk about this stuff so much all the time. And again, I've just really processed it all and cultivated a lot of like acceptance around all of this. And anyway, a couple months later, I got pregnant again and shocked again. And I did not miscarry. I am now 18 weeks pregnant with our second. And everything, I'm very hopeful. Everything looked good. I did the genetic testing. That's something I didn't mention, actually, that I did find out the reason why I miscarried with the first one. And it was trisomy 13. So that's a chromosomal abnormality. And so learning that it gave me incredible closure, because even though that you did nothing wrong, that on an intellectual level, you always can't help but question yourself. And learning that was like, this is a thing where there is no chance of the baby surviving. If a baby is born with trisomy 13, it does not survive. It will die. And so, yes, that absolutely gave me closure and allowed me to really just firmly know that, that was meant to be. That was never going to be a healthy baby ever. And so, of course, that really helped me heal. So I find it, I know it's very difficult when you don't have an answer. And I know a lot of you don't get answers because a lot of the women that I speak to, they don't have answers. And that must be really, really difficult. So I definitely sympathize with that and consider myself lucky that I did get an answer. So, and that's the thing, through all of this, I consider myself so lucky because I am, even though I had, the 2 miscarriages, the 1 late term, I'm still incredibly blessed and lucky. And I think that's the kind of like a mindset that really helps you through this and helps you let go a lot of the stress and anxiety and fear that comes with this. And so that's it. I am, like I said, 18 weeks pregnant. And I mean, again, until that baby's in my arms, you don't want to get too ahead of yourself, but I'm definitely feeling hopeful and feeling good, and hoping that this home birth goes equally well as well. And I will continue to share my story all the time and speak with women who have gone through this and help whoever wants help in this way, with a yoga practice. And so, like I mentioned earlier, connecting with other women who had been through this was one of the few things that did bring me comfort. And so that's why I think this event is so amazing. And if you're in the middle of it right now, then I am hoping and praying for your rainbow baby that you deserve, and ultimately hoping that you're okay mentally, emotionally, no matter what comes next. And so thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my story.
Please note that all speakers, including experts and professionals, express information, views, and opinions that should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any medical conditions. If you have a medical issue, please consult a qualified professional. Speakers voice their own views, opinions, and conclusions, and they may not reflect the views, opinions, and conclusions of other speakers. Ella Rose, The Joy of Sunflowers, and its sponsors may not endorse all or any of the views, opinions, or conclusions expressed.